My sister lied that I ruined her marriage, turned our family against me. Now my parents want me to share my baby with her because she's infertile. To give you a little background, my sister, Pam, who's 30 now, managed to convince our parents and several relatives to skip my wedding. Why? Because I was getting married while she was going through a divorce, and in her mind, that just wasn't acceptable. But since the plain truth wasn't enough to turn people against me, she took things a step further, spreading lies and rumors to make sure they stayed away. I'm 27 now and currently in my second trimester of pregnancy. My husband and I recently shared the news on social media, which is how my parents and Pam found out about it. After almost 3 years of complete silence between us, they suddenly reached out, wanting to patch things up. And the reason? Pam can't have kids. She's infertile and has already gone through multiple rounds of IVF, but none of them have worked. She's still determined to keep trying, though, because, in her mind, adoption or surrogacy just aren't the right solutions for her right now. So why did my parents reach out after all this time? Because they thought that me having a baby was a perfect excuse to fix things with Pam. They figured that if we made up, she could spend time with my child, her niece or nephew, since, in their words, the baby would be indirectly linked to her by blood. And, according to them, this arrangement would be great for me too. Their reasoning? My baby could have 2 mothers this way, and I'd have some extra help. It was obvious to me that my parents just wanted to pretend we were one big happy family again, but only because Pam couldn't have one of her own. I saw right through their fake kindness the moment we got on the phone. So I told them straight up I wasn't going along with their ridiculous plan. Expecting me to welcome them back into my life and let Pam play pretend mother with my future child? That was pure insanity. I made it clear that if they truly wanted to make things right, they should have done it for the right reasons, because I was their family and they had wronged me, not because I was having a baby and Pam wanted a consolation prize. That didn't sit well with them. They got defensive, saying they were only trying to do the right thing because they knew I'd need all the help I could get once the baby arrived. And since Pam was willing to volunteer her time, they thought I had no reason to be so harsh. They swore it was all innocent and that I was overreacting. But I stood my ground. I told them I was the mother here, and I already had all the help I needed from my husband and in-laws. If they had found it so easy to cut me off for 3 years, they might as well keep it that way. And this is where I may have stepped over the line. I told them that maybe the reason Pam couldn't get pregnant was that someone like her, a truly awful person, was never meant to be a mother in the first place. After that call, my phone blew up. I got a flood of messages from my parents, a few relatives, and, of course, Pam herself. They all said I was way out of line and that what I said was cruel. That I was kicking her while she was down. But the truth is, I still haven't forgiven her for what she did before my wedding. So honestly, I don't feel bad about what I said. For some context, Pam had already been married for 2 years when I was getting married. She and her ex had been together for 3 years before tying the knot, and from the start, he had been very clear he didn't want kids. That was one of the first things she told our parents when they started getting serious. I remember being in the room when she talked about it, though, as usual, she and my parents acted like I wasn't even there. That's just how it's always been between us. Pam has always been their golden child, while I was more or less ignored. Pam and I never got along, even as kids. We fought a lot when we were younger, but over time, we just started avoiding each other instead. So while she was sitting there, telling our parents that her boyfriend didn't want kids, I just listened quietly. She admitted that she definitely wanted children in the future, but she was hoping that by the time they got married, she'd be able to change his mind. Well, that didn't happen. They got married, and when she started pushing him to have kids, the fights began. Every time we had family dinners, she'd go on and on about how hard it was to be with him. But from my perspective, she was the one who had knowingly walked into a marriage with a man who had made his stance clear from the very beginning. She thought she could change him, and when she couldn't, she acted like it was all his fault. Of course, I never said any of this out loud. Pointing that out would have just led to more drama. After a few months of trying to convince him, things escalated. One day, my parents told me that Pam had moved out and was staying with them indefinitely. Apparently, they had a massive fight, and their marriage had reached the point of no return. At that time, my husband and I had just started putting down deposits for our wedding. We had been engaged for a few months and together for almost 4 years before that. We had always been ready for marriage. We were just waiting to get to a stable point in our careers before making it official. So when we finally started planning our big day, we were beyond excited. And that's when Pam decided to make it all about her. When my parents first told me that Pam and her husband were heading for a divorce, they didn't just share the news, they also had a request. They wanted me to put my wedding on hold indefinitely. Their reasoning? They thought it would be too painful for Pam to watch me get married while she was in the middle of a divorce. On top of that, she was devastated that her plans to have a baby had been completely derailed. Since she had always dreamed of being a mother, they believed the least I could do was spare her feelings by postponing my wedding. That was, without a doubt, one of the most insensitive and downright ridiculous things they had ever suggested. Of course, I told them immediately that I wasn't going to do any of that. My wedding was happening, whether Pam liked it or not. She and I had never been close, so I really didn't see why I should put my entire life on hold just to accommodate her emotions. Naturally, my parents weren't happy about my decision. To them, I was being selfish for refusing to prioritize Pam's feelings over my own wedding. And when they realized I wasn't going to budge, they hit me with an ultimatum: if I didn't postpone, they wouldn't be attending. That hurt. I had always known they favored Pam, but I never expected them to go this far for her. Still, I made my peace with it and told them they were free to do whatever they wanted. That should have been the end of it. But, of course, Pam wasn't content with just skipping my wedding. She wanted to make sure no one else showed up either. At first, she stuck to playing the victim, telling everyone how insensitive I was for choosing to get married while she was going through such a terrible time. She was looking for sympathy, but most people just felt bad for her without taking any real action. That wasn't enough for Pam. She wanted more than just sympathy. She wanted people to actively boycott my wedding. And since simply telling the truth wasn't getting her the reaction she wanted, she decided to escalate. That's when the rumors started. She began telling people that I had actually convinced her husband to leave her. According to her, I was jealous of her and couldn't stand the idea of her becoming a mother before me. It was an absolutely ridiculous claim, considering I had never even been close with her husband. In fact, I was certain that if he and I had ever had any kind of friendship, she wouldn't have married him in the first place. But for some reason, people started believing her. She even told them that I had been rubbing it in her face the whole time, that I had manipulated him into leaving, convinced him that he'd have a better life without her, and even planted the idea that a child-free lifestyle was the way to go. Every single word of it was a lie. The truth was, I had barely interacted with my brother-in-law while they were together. But Pam lied with such confidence that people bought into it. So when I sent out my wedding invitations, many of them were declined. I already knew why. Some of my cousins and other relatives who were still on my side had told me exactly what Pam had been saying about me. So, I wasn't surprised when I saw how many people had turned their backs on me. In the end, the only family members who attended my wedding were a handful of cousins and a few others. Everyone else, friends, coworkers, my husband's family, showed up and made sure I had an amazing day. But on my side? The turnout was embarrassing. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I was furious. I could have tried to reach out, tried to clear my name, but what was the point? People had already made up their minds. A few of them had even blocked me. It would have been my word against Pam's, and I didn't see the use in fighting a battle I had already lost. Thankfully, on my wedding day, I was surrounded by my husband, my friends, and my in-laws. They went out of their way to make sure I had so much fun that, at least for that one day, I barely even cared about the family members who had chosen not to come. But just because I enjoyed my wedding doesn't mean I've forgiven Pam. Not even close. What she did was cruel, calculated, and completely unhinged. But honestly, it didn't surprise me. Pam had always been like this. If she wasn't happy, she'd make damn sure no one else was either. She'd been that way since childhood. Most people grow out of that kind of behavior as they get older, but apparently, not her. After the wedding, I cut her and my parents off completely. And as time went on, my resentment toward them only grew stronger. Then, about a year later, something happened that made me even angrier. My husband and I were out for lunch one day when we ran into Pam's ex-husband for the first time since their divorce. He was sitting a few tables away with some co-workers. At first, we weren't sure if he was going to acknowledge us, but after a moment, he got up and walked over. To our surprise, he congratulated us on our wedding and even apologized for not attending. He explained that, given the situation with Pam, it just didn't feel right for him to be there. Since he was making small talk, we were polite in return. My husband, half-jokingly, said, "Well, you might as well have come. Pam didn't even bother showing up." That was when the confusion hit. Pam's ex-husband looked genuinely shocked. He asked what we meant, and that's how we got to talking about everything that had happened around the time of the wedding. Apparently, she had been deliberately pushing back the dates for their mediation sessions, dragging out the divorce process. And her excuse? She was too busy helping with my wedding planning. That was why he had been so thrown off when he found out she never even attended, because, from what she had told him, she had been deeply involved in my wedding preparations. He had found it strange at the time that she was suddenly so invested in my big day, but he hadn't wanted to accuse her of intentionally stalling the divorce. And that was Pam in a nutshell, always finding a way to manipulate a situation to work in her favor. Pam's ex-husband told us that, for a long time, he had tried to be patient with her because, deep down, she was scared of being alone. But after hearing what we had to say about how she had spread all those lies about me and skipped my wedding just to sabotage it, he was genuinely shocked. He had no idea she had done any of that. And then we found out something that completely changed the way we saw their divorce. Up until that moment, we had all assumed that their marriage ended simply because they couldn't agree on having kids. She wanted them, and he didn't. That was what Pam had told everyone, after all. But her ex-husband told us that the real story was much darker than that. He admitted that, at first, he had been completely against the idea of having children. But after months of arguments, he had actually started considering her perspective. The constant fighting had worn him down, and he had begun to think that maybe, just maybe, he could see himself as a father one day. And on the day he finally decided to talk to her about it, to tell her he was ready to have a serious discussion about kids, she let something slip that changed everything. When he told her he was finally open to the idea of having a baby, she was ecstatic. But then, in her excitement, she made a joke, one that sent chills down his spine. She told him that even if he hadn't changed his mind, he would have had to come to terms with it eventually. That set off alarm bells in his head, so he asked her to explain what she meant. And that's when she admitted the truth. She had stopped taking her birth control pills a while ago, and she had never told him. If they had continued like that, she would have eventually gotten pregnant, and her plan was to just let him deal with it. That was it. That was the moment he realized he couldn't stay married to her. Of course, when she told him, she tried to laugh it off like it was no big deal, just a little harmless deception. But he saw it for what it was. She had tried to baby trap him, fully intending to force him into fatherhood whether he wanted it or not. And that was what their final, explosive fight had actually been about. But when she told our family about the divorce, she conveniently left that part out. Instead, she spun it into a sob story about how her husband was a heartless man who wouldn't give her the one thing she wanted most in the world. After hearing all this, my husband and I finally understood why Pam had acted so unhinged around the time of my wedding. She knew, deep down, that her marriage had ended because of her own actions. If she had just kept quiet, if she hadn't admitted to what she had done, she might have been able to carry out her plan. She could have had a baby with her husband, just like she wanted. But she messed everything up for herself and then took it out on me. Learning all of this only made my resentment toward her grow stronger. At that point, I could have reached out to my parents and the rest of my relatives to tell them the truth. I could have exposed Pam for what she had done. But by then, I had already cut ties with all the people who had chosen to believe her lies and skip my wedding. And honestly, I had no desire to reopen those wounds. I just wanted to move forward with my life. So I kept my mouth shut and let it go. But that doesn't mean I've forgiven her. The truth is, I don't feel bad at all for what I said to my parents. I genuinely believe it's a good thing she hasn't been able to have a child so far. With the way she thinks and behaves, I don't see how she could possibly be a good mother. And the fact that she and my parents reached out to me only after I announced my pregnancy? That was unsettling. They weren't interested in fixing our relationship because they missed me or because they regretted how they had treated me. No, they wanted back in because they saw my baby as an opportunity to play happy family. That wasn't going to happen. And the whole idea of my baby having two mothers? Yeah, no. Not necessary. My husband and my in-laws completely agree. The only thing giving me second thoughts is the way some of the people I'm actually on good terms with reacted to what I said. Even they seemed to think I was too harsh for saying that Pam's infertility might be a sign that she wasn't meant to be a mother. For those who were wondering, no, Pam hasn't remarried. As far as I know, she's not even dating anyone. I don't keep tabs on her, but from what little I've heard through mutual acquaintances, she's completely single. The only thing she cares about right now is becoming a mother. As for why she refuses to consider adoption or surrogacy, who knows? Personally, I think it's because she doesn't believe a baby is really hers unless she gives birth to it herself. She's been trying for almost 3 years now, starting from when she was still married, all the way through the time she's spent undergoing IVF with donor sperm. But nothing has worked for her so far. At this point, most people would at least start considering other options. Clearly, something isn't working. But not Pam. And that's fine, it's her choice. What's not fine, though, is the way she and my parents suddenly decided to reach out to me the moment I announced my pregnancy. And that whole two mothers comment? That stuck with me. A lot of you picked up on the fact that they specifically mentioned that my baby would be linked to her by blood. I mean, yeah, technically, that's true. She's my biological sister, so my child will be related to her. But why even bring that up? Something about the way they phrased it just felt off, like they were trying to stake some kind of claim. And honestly, the whole thing gave me major baby stealer vibes. I can't shake the feeling that if I were to actually entertain the idea of forgiving Pam and letting her be around my child, she wouldn't just be an aunt. She'd start projecting, treating my baby like her own, and acting like she had some kind of parental role. And I can't have that. Some of you have also asked why I haven't spoken up about the real reason she and her husband got divorced. Why I haven't defended myself in front of the rest of the family. Honestly, I just don't think it's worth it. After everything that happened, I came to realize who my real friends were, the people who actually cared about me and were willing to stand by my side. I won't lie, it took me a while to come to terms with it all, and for a long time, I was deeply hurt by what my family had done. I had debated whether or not I should speak up about the truth, but in the end, I chose my peace over reopening old wounds. Even some of the family members I still get along with admitted that what I said to Pam about her infertility was a bit harsh. They weren't pushing for an apology, but they did think I went too far. And that's the only thing that gave me pause, because these are people who have always had my back. If even they felt like my words were a little much, maybe I did have some reason to reflect. Update 1. I just want to say thank you to everyone who commented on my post. Most of you seem to believe I'm NTA, and I truly appreciate that. I've decided that I'm not going to apologize to Pam or my parents. I'm going to continue ignoring them, no matter how much noise they make. And trust me, they are not happy about it. They've gone right back to playing the victim, ranting about me both online and in real life, telling anyone who will listen that I'm a terrible person. But honestly, I don't care. The people who are talking crap about me now are the same ones who didn't show up to my wedding, the same ones who turned their backs on me years ago. What's the worst they can do? Cut me off even more? I'm not exactly losing sleep over it. As for the family members who are on my side but didn't like what I said, I decided to reach out to them. Since Pam and my parents are making such a big deal out of my comment, the whole family knows about it now, so I figured I should address it. I told them straight up, yeah, what I said was said in the heat of the moment, but that doesn't change the fact that Pam has treated me horribly for years. What she did to me leading up to my wedding was premeditated. She deliberately and maliciously spread lies about me, and that wasn't a spur-of-the-moment reaction. She knew exactly what she was doing. So no, I don't feel sorry for what I said. My words didn't ruin her life the way her rumors ruined my wedding. At the end of the day, what I said doesn't affect her ability to have children, but her lies affected my relationship with my entire family. It's not the same thing. Thankfully, my relatives understood my perspective, and the ones who were on my side are still on my side. They've decided to drop the subject altogether, and honestly, that's fine by me. All I want right now is a happy and peaceful pregnancy, and I just hope Pam and my parents wrap up their drama soon. Because if they don't, I might have to start dropping some facts that they definitely won't like, and I really don't want to get dragged into this mess any further, especially while I'm pregnant. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since my last phone call with my parents. And for 2 weeks, they have been running their mouths to anyone who will listen. They've been begging the rest of the family to cut me off completely, urging even the people I'm on good terms with to turn against me. Basically, they want me to be completely ostracized. But since I had already cleared things up with my relatives who actually matter, their little plan hasn't worked. So, of course, they decided to take things online. They've been posting vague rants on social media, not mentioning me by name, but making it painfully obvious who they're talking about. They've been going on about a certain family member who has always been jealous of Pam and has tried to ruin her life. They even claimed that I mocked her infertility out of pure spite. At first, I ignored it. I knew none of it was true, so why should I care? But then, they crossed the line. They went back to spreading the same old lies they had spread during my wedding, accusing me of ruining Pam's marriage. That was it. That was my breaking point. I decided I wasn't going to stay silent this time. I reached out to my ex-brother-in-law. We don't talk much, but we still exchange greetings on birthdays and holidays, so we're at least on civil terms. I filled him in on everything that was happening and asked if he was okay with me posting the truth about their divorce. He gave me the green light. So I did it. I posted everything, the real reason their marriage fell apart, how Pam had lied to our family, how she had tried to trap him into fatherhood by secretly going off birth control. I laid it all out. And now, the drama has exploded. My phone has been blowing up with texts, emails, and missed calls from all over the family. Some people want to know if what I posted is true, others are demanding that I take it down, and some are even accusing me of lying about Pam again. But I'm not responding. I'm not engaging. And you know what's interesting? My parents and Pam, who never shut up when they're playing the victim, have been completely silent since my post went up. They know they can't argue with the truth. But I'm sure it's only a matter of time before they find something else to say. And you know what's funny? Even after all of this, not one person in my family has apologized to me. Not one. Not that I expected them to. Update 3. It's been a few days since I made my post, and today, I finally heard from Pam and my parents. And guess what? They're suddenly ready to apologize, but only if I take the post down. Apparently, while nobody from the family has apologized to me, they have called out Pam and my parents for their lies. People are finally realizing that they spent years vilifying me for something that wasn't even true. They had everyone convinced that I ruined Pam's marriage, and now that the truth is out, they're getting dragged for it. It's honestly kind of hilarious how fast some of these people switched sides. First, they blindly believed I was the villain, and now they're throwing Pam under the bus. But even with all of that, they still don't want to acknowledge the damage they did to me. Not that it matters anymore. I told my parents and Pam that I wasn't taking the post down until I felt like it. Their apologies meant nothing to me at this point. They only wanted to make things right because their reputations were on the line, not because they actually felt bad for what they had done. I sent them that message and blocked them. They haven't reached out since. This morning, I decided to take the post down not because they asked me to, but because I don't want my social media tainted by these people. I want a happy, peaceful pregnancy, and seeking revenge on people who don't even matter to me anymore doesn't fit into that. Honestly, being who they are is punishment enough for them. At the end of the day, I'm happy. My husband and I are in a great place. I have friends and family who truly care about me, and that's all I really need. I couldn't care less what Pam and my parents are up to now. And after this whole fiasco, I really hope they've finally gotten the message I don't want them in my life. So yeah, I think this is it. Thank you to everyone who has supported me, advised me, and reminded me that I don't owe these people anything. It means more than you know.